When I started taking music production a little bit more seriously, I found that there were rules when it came to making my music sound good. But here's one thing to think about. These rules aren't necessarily laws. They're more or less just tools that are going to try and help us understand sound better and try and make our music sound really, really good. More recently, I've been trying to push these rules and bend them in a creative way, and I'm finding that it allows me to be overall a lot more creative with my choices when it comes to my music productions. So what if breaking the rules is actually how you discover your own sound? It can be sometimes uncomfortable pushing the boundaries of our own comfort zones when it comes to making our music, but I do feel like it is worth it if you're ready to try and find your sound truly. So that really begs a few questions. What are the rules? Are there actually any rules at all? And if we try and break some of these rules that we've been told, what happens? The purpose of this video is to break some of those rules intentionally just to see what happens, so we can try and discover if they're actually worth following or if they're not worth following. But I do recommend that if you haven't had any prior experience with Ableton Live, then this video might be a little bit confusing, but for those who have got some experience with it, then this will be a good one for you. I used to follow this idea that everything has to be in key, and I would follow that really strictly. Like, I'd tune all of my drums just to the right pitch. That being said, these days I'm doing that less, and I'm sort of leaning on the idea of dissonance, that it doesn't really matter what sort of key it is. If it makes sense, it makes sense, and really I'm just trusting my ears here for what I think I really want from the sound. So let's explore that a little bit here and just sort of see what happens. I tend to go for this kick drum here, this DS kick from Ableton, just because I can pitch it quite nice and I've got a nice K and envelope control. I think it's a really punchy kick. It's in F. Now I'm just going to do a few settings to soften it up in a way. Cool. We'll just do 4 on the floor. I think that's nice and easy. Cool. Let's go into some drum samples here and just pull some stuff in, and we're going to see what happens. Sure. Like that. Been really enjoying these CR78 or C78 if you're on Ableton Live's drum samples. I find them really, really, really nice. That is really loud. So this is just some random drum loop that I've made, like really, really simple, using the Ableton DS kick and the C78 samples. Let's just start pitching some stuff just to show you that it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to set these values at random. This is nothing crazy or new. Again, I can change these things around and we'll just see what happens again. I don't think it really matters what you've got in there in terms of pitching of the drums. It's just changing the overall feel of the track. It doesn't sound like anything's out of key. I think you've just got to use your ears rather than anything else. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about what tune your drums are in. I would just more be concerned about where do they fit in the mix, and just checking the vibe, making sure that how you've pitched your drums is sort of in tune with the emotion that you want to express. Alright, let's talk about reverb on low end. I used to be really, really careful with that kind of thing and make sure that I would mid-side out any frequencies from the low end that are in the side register. That being said, recently I've been playing with the idea of more reverb on the low end, and I actually think it sounds great, to be fair. So we'll just use the standard kick that I have before, and I'm going to put a hybrid reverb on that because I want to use its convolution modes. I really quite like them, so I'll get my convolution reverb set up. I really like this real places section here. That kind of sounds cool as an offbeat thing, but that's getting a little bit more experimental. Now, traditionally what I would have done is I've got an EQ. I would go to mid-side mode, go to the side, and take out some of that oomph. something like this. To me, it doesn't really sound like there's too much nasty stuff going on. If anything, I feel like the reverb really just helps the kick in a way. Given that the decay on this kick is quite short, I'm filling it out in a sense with hybrid reverb. Now, there's other ways that you can do this sort of thing as well, where you can open up a send channel, put a reverb on it, run a few low-end elements through that, and see what happens by filling out that low-end information. That being said, I'm going to go for an imager on this kick just to see what it sounds like with the reverb on and off, and then with this EQ turned on and off. So we'll just go for the reverb first. You can see on this Ozone imager that there's nothing too crazy and too wide about this kick. Even at 100% wet, it's relatively coming down the middle compared to the rest of the mix. If we turn the mid-side EQ on, let's see what happens. Doesn't actually look like that much. Like, the difference is really minimal. But again, I'm just speaking from my own experience here. I have got a really simple tom or conga line happening underneath my kick here. Now, what I want to test is putting some reverb on it to see how it interacts with the kick, and I can use that using the send return method, which I mentioned before. So I'm just taking the audio from this low end. I will get another reverb. I'll go for my hybrid again because I quite like it, as I mentioned before. Now that is loud. Just putting an auto filter on it. Just so I can focus on the actual bass. On the actual, like, you know, bass frequencies, low end, that kind of thing. Now with the conga, I'm just going to turn that down 5 dB, and with this thing I'm going to turn it down 10. I just want to sort of balance out the mix a little bit. I want the kick to be as present as possible. Now I'm going to put a side chain on this conga from the kick, just so that my kick punches through. I'm going to do the same for this send return thing here. To me, that sounds really nice. There's just like a really good, I guess, like presence of low-end frequencies and sub-frequencies there with the reverb. It's not too much, but it's just enough to sort of make a big difference. So what I'll do here is I'll turn that send channel on and off so you can hear the difference. It definitely makes a difference in terms of like the presence of those two elements and sort of making them sound more interesting. I don't really see the issue with that. I feel like it sounds really good. I'll run it through the imager again. Now this is the kind of stuff that sort of worries me a little bit in terms of like a visual feedback, just because there's lots of sort of wide information here. So this really begs the question, do you trust your ears and, you know, follow what sounds best, or do you sort of trust what the information on your screen is telling you? Typically what I do is, if I have these sorts of low bassy elements in a reverb, I tend to sum the sub bass up to maybe 90 hertz to mono in my master bus. So I will, I guess, adhere to the idea that your bass should be in mono. I don't want to cause any phasing issues or anything like that. So that's why I'll sum to mono generally on the master bus. When it comes to actually making the track, is it that important? Now, it must be said that this imager is on that return channel. I'm going to put it on the main bus, where I've already got one. Get rid of that. That is telling for me. Most of the track is just coming down the middle. It seems like there's no, or at least not a lot of information coming out the sides from the reverb. So yeah, to me that sounds good. I wouldn't worry about it so much. Okay, here's one for you. It's the idea of setting sound levels to a specific level to achieve a balanced mix. I actually ran this rule through an AI text generator just to see what it would say. And the advice it was giving was set your kick at -12 dB peak and then give the other elements a spacing of say 6 dB around that kick. Let's experiment with that a bit. Now I've got a full track up here that I have previously made, and I've set my kick at around -6 dB peak. So let's have a listen to the track first. So it's sounding, I don't know, it sounds pretty good to me. I chose -6 because I've been playing with this rule a bit. The idea is that, you know, anchoring your kick, your loudest element, to a certain volume level and then, you know, building the other tracks around it is just putting you in a pocket for a good mix. I don't think it's worth following that rule to the T and having everything inside 6 dB of each other. I think doing that is going to put things in the pocket, but you need to think about the best levels for those sounds effectively. Like, again, it's a guideline, I think, this rule. I don't think it's worth actually following it strictly, but I actually think there's good results from following it roughly. You know, put yourself in the pocket for a good mix by doing this, and then just balance everything else around it. What I might do as an example, just to sort of give you an idea, is just turn everything to 0. Kick, loudest element. Now this channel over here is some sidechain saturation that I'm using. Now I'm setting the level for that at -12. That's within 6 dB of the -6 that I've chosen for my kick. So I'm just going to use that for all 3 of these bass elements here. I think it sounds good, but there's some elements that I actually want to adjust here. For example, this higher pitched conga I think is a little bit too loud for this. So I'm going to start adjusting to my taste more so than sticking and adhering to that 6 dB rule. To me, that sounds a little bit better. Like, I've turned my conga down a little bit. That's hitting -12. This other one's -7. This other one over here is -11. So again, they're sort of in that region of around -6 dB, but I'm just adjusted them purely based on my ears and to my taste. I'm not looking at the numbers here. I'm just setting them to how I want them. So this next one is another return channel for these bass elements. So I'm going to mix that in. It's a little bit quiet. I can't actually necessarily hear it, so I'm going to boost it a bit with utility. Now this has got a bit too much of a dynamic range for me. Now it must be said I'm using this return channel number D to create some, I guess, weird stuff happening around whatever I want to send to it, particularly the kick. Now it's running basically a grain delay. Basically a grain delay. and some EQ. You'll notice here how I've gone for a mid-side based EQ. Again, I'm trying to, I guess, keep some of those low-end frequencies in mono. I've set it like this because I thought it sounded good. Simple as that, really. Now that return channel is coming in around -22, so I don't want to overpower everything else, hence why I've kept it quite low. Now, let's just say I try and push this hi-hat any higher than what it is coming in at, which is -19. It certainly is loud. It's within 6 dB of the kick, for sure. But I don't necessarily want it to be that loud. I feel like it might be a bit too overpowering. It's quite an intense sound in any case, so I'm going to take that back about 6 dB. Sounds good there. That was coming in at -18, so obviously more than 6 dB. You get what I'm saying here. Now, the element that I brought up is basically the main idea of the track. It's really overpowering. I've got a lot of effects doing all sorts of crazy stuff on it. So I'm just going to adjust this until I think my ears hear it in the right spot. You'll notice how I've got a few EQs running on this effects chain down the bottom here. It is to keep the low end in check. This isn't putting anything in mono. It's just I want to keep the sub bass reserved for those low end elements and give them space. I'm taking the bass of this track, but not the sub bass, although some of the sub will probably bleed in with the EQ curves that I've got going on. I'm just going to set some levels again with some of these other percussive elements just to see what happens. I think that things are balancing quite nicely in terms of achieving a balanced mix with a nice punchy low end, some nice sharp, snappy, exciting percussion, and some weird old squelchy, strange lead line, I guess is what you'd call it. To me, that works a bit better. But yeah, this is relatively speaking a good way to adjust your mix. Again, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that you should follow religiously, but I think it works as a piece of guidance more so than anything else. You've no doubt have heard the term less is more before, and this is the idea of keeping things as minimal as possible and using the least stuff will breed the best results. I'm suggesting that these things might be a little bit of an oversimplification when it comes to music production. Sometimes my tunes have up to or over 50 elements in them. That being said, I want to show you a way of how to get a lot of things and turn them into one deeply layered piece. So we've got some low end. There is reverb on here, this like send return channel as well, which is what we've spoken about before. This pad sound, quite a dominant sound. It's basically the whole idea of the track. Large effect rack on this pad. It was tricky to try and make it work and try and tame it. The actual audio is just it was taken out of a window in Berlin. There was just like some bells, some church bells in the background. I thought it'd be nice to record it and put it into a track. So that's what those are. Just lots of percussion, ride cymbals, alternate ride cymbals. Doing a nice cool panning effect on that thing. Shakers. Some nice like mid 1000 hertz. 1 kilohertz like cut off clap, which I quite like. More percussion, more shakers. This hi-hat. Just wanted like a nice sharp transient there, like a soft subtle one that would work well with the reverb just to carry the track in a way. Yeah, quite like that. More maracas, more percussion basically. More shakers. This one's the DS hat, which you get in Ableton in the instrument section there. I love these things, like setting a bit of attack on them, playing with the decay. You can sort of, really get a sharp sound or get something really loose. Yeah, I love this thing. Very versatile. Some 606 hats, some weird like ethereal shaker thing. I quite like this one. This was quite a large rack in a way. It's adding a lot of color to the cymbal. Again, this is like the original source material is this DS cymbal, which you can get on Ableton as well. Really, really cool. I love these things. Down below it, again, another cymbal. The actual mix is sounding all right. I'm too curious to not put a glue compressor on it and just see what happens. There's nice fine sparkling bubbles. 10 out of 10. This is a project of mine that's got 62 layers of audio. It's the same sort of principle. I've grouped everything, I feel like, into like sounds. Like we've got pads, more sort of pad sounds backing that up. I recorded this by basically looping some audio, stretching it out, and then like readjusting the transient markers and getting it to sort of scratch and run it through a really distorted channel up here, which sounds quite nice. Definitely one of the main ideas of the track. Pretty simple bass, again, gated. Kick noises. An actual kick up here. Up here, we've got like more percussion layers. This hi-hat, the DS, again. More 606. I like the 606 sharpness. A few layers of drum samples. Again, more percussion. Lots of layers of percussion. The different sections are sort of obviously driving the progression of the track. But up here, I've got more like little sound bites, I guess. They're running through quite hot through like this effect rack up here. I sort of added them in during this build-up section just to, I guess, like add a bit of tension, or at least try to. Lots of sounds happening. So this one was quite a tough track to mix and yeah, that gets me hyped. More rides and cymbals up here, like lots of different layers of percussion. So yeah, that's sort of how I would structure it, like in terms of how I'm treating all the individual channels as I've grouped these like sounds together. I put a lot of like processing on the group rather than the individual channels. I guess I just like how it colors the overall sound that way. In terms of like these growling, crunchy sounds, for instance, two very like crunchy sounds. They sort of blend into one. Like they're both equally growly and crunchy, but I'm making them work with one another just so that they I guess like work and groove together. I hope you can forgive me for how crude this is, but the battery and the GoPros just died before I could wrap this thing up. I wanted to conclude this piece by saying things like the rule of 3, sometimes I've seen it as rule of 4, I think they hold weight. I think that if you add a lot of things to a track, it can become really overwhelming. So if you want to try and blend those things in, it's about compartmentalizing them into 3 or 4 main groups within the organization of your musical production in your DAW. Let's reference the rule of 3 on something like a rock band. You'll have a singer who plays guitar, a drummer, and then a bassist. Their 3 people are doing 4 different things, and that's like enough to obviously make songs out of. If you could apply the same sort of approach when producing electronic music with lots of layers, then I truly think that you can use that rule of 3 or 4 to your strength and really balance out your mix. I want to leave you with the idea that rules are just tools. They are there, and I think it's good to have an understanding of why they're there, because that means that you can bend them in the ways that you want to and really start exploring and expressing yourself in new and interesting ways. I think that this music is going to keep rolling if we continue to push for new ideas. And that means really giving up on just what's popular and expressing yourself and being yourself. I think that being authentic is the best thing that we can do for the scene, because it means that it's going to be filled with new ideas. But you need to break the rules in order to do that. So that means you need to take a risk, take a leap of faith, really lean on your creativity and expression of self. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. So if you do have any thoughts or comments or questions, obviously please write them below on this video. Just want to say thanks for spending the time watching this video. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you very much.